What is a Dumble? A Dumble is the top of the mountain as far as guitar amplification is concerned. They were hand-built by one individual, uniquely tailored to the player, the instrument, and the style it was used for. And although no Dumble is created equal, there is a common Dumble sound that people have been chasing forever. A lot of boutique builds and clones, but for whatever reason, we can't capture that real deal Dumble sound. These amps are thought of as a holy grail by many, are the centerpiece for countless collections, studios, and stages around the world. And if you've been lucky enough to hear one of these, you'll realize that there is no replacement for the sound. And we'll get to the sound in a little bit. So doing this for about 30 years, we've had the distinct honor of dealing with a lot of Dumbles and have kind of snowballed into the authority of these amps in a way. I mean, that's not by accident. I got hip to these at a really young age, just naturally kind of wondering, what's the best of the best? What's the most expensive? And it just like set my brain off with kind of an obsession. And I sought out to find and get Dumbles in here. The hunt for Dumbles have sent me to Japan, Europe, all over the United States, and we've had probably 25 plus in here that we've sold, and then double that at least that I've just played in private collections and whatnot. We feel so lucky to have this experience with these amazing iconic amps over decades and decades. While we had 4 in that are sold and about to ship, we wanted to take a moment to kind of share with you our experience with these. It opens the gates for a lot of people's opinion, and we're welcoming that. We're just gonna do the best we can and kind of give you our breakdown on why these amps are so special. But first, let's get to the history of Dumble. Howard Alexander Dumble was born in 1944 in Bakersfield, California, a place with already rich musical history. His grandfather had a 20-piece string band, and his father was credited with developing one of the first automatic transmissions. So already on paper, you can see there's brilliance brewing. You've got this part of your brain that is musical, then you have this kind of high caliber engineer mindset. And together you get Dumble amplifiers. I think that's the only way it could have happened. Howard was actually a trombone player until he saw some live rock and roll music and bought a guitar, and the rest was history. In high school, he was contracted by Mosrite to build 10 amplifiers for the Ventures, which is pretty incredible to think about. This iconic, very established band asks this high school student to develop 10 amps so they can bring on the road, use on stage. I think that was a massive turning point in his career. What Dumble did is basically start as a tinker, and that's what he was known for in his small shop in Santa Cruz. Word slowly got around about this elusive engineer that was making people's amps sound better until people started knocking on the door asking for custom builds. So by this time in the 1960s, when Dumble had a shop, he already had a couple amplifiers, some of the early models. We actually had the first amp ever built, serial number 001, from the original owner. We've had a few from the original owners who all have this awesome common story about this kind of jolly guy that was just the mastermind. And it was this name that you heard echoed in venues and practice spaces, not only to fix amplifiers, but possibly have him make you one. And it was something that he'd tailored to the player. He'd go out and see these live acts and have these conversations with the musicians to figure out exactly what's gonna suit them best. Dumble realized that there's kind of a standard quality in amplifier production at that time, and that's just due to production numbers and how much you can really spend on one amplifier time-wise. And that wasn't a case for Dumble, and he took great pride in his work. So some of these amps took a long time. Some of the mods took a long time. I remember talking to Katz, he had a super reverb for over 10 years. Definitely took his time with it, but you can tell that his heart was poured into everything that he built. Dumble made amps until he passed away a few years ago. The Overdrive Special is definitely the staple. The Steel String Singer's another one. He was building amps consistently for either friends or players that he respected. There's a lot of stories about Dumble. One of my favorites is, you ever called to check up on your amp status, he'd throw away the contract. I don't know if that's true. I love that story, but I've talked to famous musicians come through here that are literally on the verge of getting lawyers involved because they could not get this amplifier back from him. I don't know if they ever did. I don't know if he really wanted to be known as a super guru of amplifiers, but I don't think there's anything stopping it. And with that, you know, you're invited to this whole world of crazy musicians, which I think he had to kind of separate so he could build how he wanted to build, the way he wanted to build. Whether you realize it or not, you've definitely heard of Dumble before. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood record, John Mayer, Continuum, Joe Bonamassa is using one right now, Jackson Browne. This amp was used on the Bob Seger Like a Rock record. If you listen to that solo on that song, it's Rick Vito playing that amp, and you listen to it and it's like, yeah, that's a Dumble. But countless players, Carlos Santana, I mean, the list goes on. They're still being used today, but they've been on record since they were built. With that being said, let's haul a couple of these over to the other room and see what they sound like. So today I brought down my personal 1961 Fender Stratocaster. Great option for running an amp through its paces. There's a million ways to record Dumbles. We're gonna do what we always do, which is a SM7B, a room mic, and just unedited straight up. So we're gonna play a couple of these original Dumbles and do a comparison with an amp that we use all the time. This is a Black Panel 1964 Fender Vibroverb, a fantastic amp, and we're gonna see how it stacks up to a couple original Dumbles. So next to it is an original overdrive special built in the 80s. And this is the elusive Overdrive Reverb by Dumble. A very, very rare amp because it has onboard reverb. So besides all the mystique, the stories, the legacy of Dumble, it all comes down to the Dumble sound. What is the Dumble sound? To me, in simple words, it's articulate, it's three-dimensional. I also just feel like there's this backbone of strength behind the guitar and the strings. You know, I always talk about sometimes instruments or amps have like surface tone. It almost just feels like it's, you know, just the strings coming off, where somehow these amps grab every screw and piece of wood that goes into that guitar and then attaches to your fingers. It truly feels like you are connected to the amplifier. I know that sounds crazy, but even just playing those, it's like it picks up on every nuance in a really, really musical way. Along with just, you know, basic tones we just set up here with the Dumble. Those EQ options, the reverb options, the overdrive, the level, all that, it's so musical and you can get lost in adjusting it and shaping your tone perfectly. That being said, it's not overwhelming. Like, it's not hard to go and find a good tone. It just really, boom, all of a sudden sounds exactly like your guitar, makes you sound more like you. It's one of those pieces that makes you almost want to play less, so you can just kind of lean into what's going on between the guitar, the amplifier, the room, and they're loud as hell. They also have this really unique hi-fi tone, which oftentimes can translate almost a little offensive, and I like my guitars bright, if you guys haven't noticed, and I can sometimes battle that where it's like too ice picky. I really love kind of the milkiness of the high end of these, and even those high end frequencies have almost like this built-in compression that just pushes them forward rather than die off. I always say it sounds like there's a Fairchild compressor hooked in the back of one of these, but it's true. They're so dynamic that even just, finger style, they do it all, and they respond exactly to the player and the instrument. All right, so that wraps up our little Dumble video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, interested in buying or selling one, please reach out to us. We obviously love these amps and are very passionate about them. Please comment below too if you've got any cool Dumble experiences, if you've played one or met Dumble, even better. But like and subscribe, and I appreciate you watching.